anything that has to do with you signing paperwork to prove something, to prove legality and all that, will more likely be moving on the blockchain. And I've even heard people that are gold bugs, complete gold head. They're like, yeah, that's happening. Welcome to the Adapt or Die podcast. This podcast explores ideas related to self-growth, finding meaning, and living a more fulfilled lifestyle. It's your host with the most, Armel Tala.
And it's your host on the low, Ben Smith. We're two college students on our own path of lifelong learning with the hope that you will join us in our journey. And now, it's time for the next episode of
the Adapt or Die podcast. Welcome back to the Bitcoin rabbit hole. But before we start, I must say, look at Ben. Do you notice anything different?
Do you notice anything different?
Ben's wearing a different shirt. I waited. I didn't say anything. Ben first walked in. I was like, And I was like, I'm only going to mention this when the podcast started. I didn't even tell Ben I
He didn't. In the spirit of finals week, I chose this shirt. If you're listening, it just says, I identify as tired.
Even though he's not actually tired. Probably you've been getting...
Oh, yeah. I've been getting like 8.5.
8.5. Anything, I should be wearing that shirt right now. We're rocking the UT. It's not a UT flannel, but the orange. But before we start, let's hit over. So we're doing the last episode, maybe 20th recording at this point.
I honestly cannot tell you what number recording this is for this episode. It's been
a lot. Our audio's been messing up, but so we are finishing our last summary, our last discussion over the basics of Bitcoin and blockchain by Antony.
Yes, sir.
Antony Lewis. And
18th time's a charm.
18 times a charm. I still almost messed it up. But so we're going to finish that up. But before we start, if you are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please share with your friends. Leave us a review. Those are always helpful to help us get out, reach out more people. And if you're on YouTube, you guys share, comment. Commenting helps a lot. Watch it through the end, put it in the background, whatever. Just had to say that at the beginning. But enough with all that promo. Time for the good stuff. So what are we going to talk about today?
Guys, today we're talking about a few problems with Bitcoin. So I'll be grilling Mel real quick just to see if he knows the issues that exist with cryptocurrency. And then we're going to talk about Ethereum and a few other crypto assets. And we'll finish off with the future of Bitcoin with the Lightning Network and DeFi.
This is be an exciting conversation. And
you said that with such, you're like, it's going to be an exciting conversation.
I know. It's just because I'm like, my guys, don't mind if I'm a little stumbly with my explanations. I just finished taking my computer science final. Computer architecture, and my brain.
Doesn't that just sound computer architecture? Like regular architecture sounds hard enough, but computer architecture, that just sounds... that's just different, bro.
I don't even know what it's about. But so, with the potential issues of Bitcoin, what problems do you have, Ben? Why are you so mad? I thought I convinced you by this point.
Well, you definitely have not convinced me. But let's start off with the first issue of centralization. So Bitcoin's chief value proposition, as we discussed last episode, is its decentralization. So that it basically has currency that's not based in an authority, right? Or any centralized entity. But there are a few aspects of Bitcoin that are more centralized than might first appear. So the first is the mining hardware that Bitcoin users or Bitcoin people who mine Bitcoin use. There is special mining hardware that is created for people to mine Bitcoin, and these manufacturers are very centralized. So very few concentrated manufacturers control almost all the manufacturing of these mining hardware. I will start there. And
so
what is
So if we're to approach this from the point of view, okay, so number one, let's address the fact that if you are producing hardware, that does not affect the network itself. The people running the code, the people actually using the hardware themselves are, securing the network. But you can make the argument that, hey, because we have a centralized group of people that are creating the specialized software that, the hardware, and that each time this, the new hardware they come out with is able to provide, greater hash power, which simply means runs faster at figuring out the target number that we mentioned in the previous episode. You're saying, well, since there's a central point that's creating all this hardware, then someone could probably negotiate with them to only give it to a group of bad actors. And then these bad actors can overrun the network, control more hash power, more computing power than everybody else, and then be able to execute double spend, which just means spending the same coin twice. The only problem is, if you execute double spend, you completely kill the integrity, the belief, the faith that people have in the Bitcoin network. The price drops to zero. Therefore, the people that are creating the hardware, they have no one to sell to anymore. Like, yes, they were selling to that central group, but then the group of attackers, they've lost their incentive to want to destroy the network, because now the network is not valuable. What's the point of spending a Bitcoin that is worth $0? And therefore then the hardware company is now like, oh, well, you guys cornered us to only sell it to you, and now Bitcoin is worth nothing and we can't even sell it to anybody else. So the argument is just practically saying the incentive models for Bitcoin is so great that everybody in the network, everybody participating, has an incentive. I keep using the word incentive, but has an incentive to keep the network honest, to keep it secure, because if the value goes down, what's the point? No, everybody loses money. So
if you guys can't tell, that's about the 8th time Mel said that. He had that one nailed down. So I definitely agree with you on this point, in the sense that, like, at this point you've converted me on that point. I have no real like counter argument there, except for, I mean, of course, when you have centralized anything, there's going to be random side effects. So maybe if it was all focused in a certain country and the country wanted to do something, or maybe if they just wanted to, when you have a centralized anything, you can always leverage things. So even if they don't want to break the network, they can still somehow minorly take advantage of maybe at least the miners, if not the network itself, in some
Really?
way.
I
That
would
might
say
be a stretch.
no. I would say, like, honestly, a bigger threat to that would say, like, because originally China had a lot of these, and I know that's like one of the other centralization issues. China had a lot of like the mining power, and a lot of the companies that do create the hardware,
Right.
and everything like that were in China. Let me say were in China, but
Until about April or May this year, then China banned they banned Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. I think
Bitcoin.
definitely
They banned,
Bitcoin.
like, mining and everything. I don't think they banned holding. They banned selling, all that. But so practically, what I was gonna say is, the problem would be that the bigger problem would be China accumulates all the Bitcoin and then, like, controls, like, I don't know, a whole bunch of it, just has a whole bunch of ownership of, like, all the Bitcoin. But obviously they did not take that move, so freedom is still intact. Let's go.
Yeah, the hash power is, the majority of it is in the U.S. I think it's around 35 or 40% is in the U.S.
And it's back at its all-time high after the China ban.
Yeah.
Meaning that more people are securing the network, baby.
Yeah, and so this centralization issue, it also extends to software and then ownership as well. We don't really need to cover them, to be honest, because the same arguments apply. Unless you want to hit on it real quick.
Yeah, ownership. So the idea is that a vast majority of people hold a lot of the Bitcoin. Well, because the people that truly believe, if anything, that should be a good sign, because everyone that is speaking up on Bitcoin, they're buying a bunch of it. And obviously they don't have all of the supply. And the goal is, people remember, a lot of people may be accumulating it, but eventually it will become, well, in my opinion, it will become the currency that people use, and therefore it will start circulating once the price has stabilized. But that is a long ways to go. So get your Bitcoin now before it runs out. I'm kidding. It's not going to run out, but yeah.
I mean, it is capped at 21 million.
But
so
the way money works is interesting.
It is. So the next two issues are much more of concern, even though we've talked about them before. I'm still not fully convinced, I guess, but I want you guys to hear these. So the second one is transaction fees. Basically, currently, as we went over last episode, there's two ways to earn money, to earn money as a miner or a bookkeeper. The first is to get block rewards for mining, but those block rewards half every 4 years, right?
Yeah.
And currently we're at 6.5 BTC per, I guess, block that you can mine. Yeah, and that's going to keep going down. So eventually that number will be trivial. The other way you can make money is through transaction fees. And so the issue is, after block rewards are essentially negligible so that they don't really affect the network much, will transaction fees be able to incentivize bookkeepers enough to hold the network together? Because you need the entire network, people need to be keeping track of transactions for the network to hold together. So will the transaction fees be high enough to incentivize bookkeepers to do so?
I had so much time to strengthen my argument
Oh
against
no.
this. I forget how bad Ben just did not believe it. I didn't get to. Lucky there, but obviously has been refined. So the counter to the transaction fees and the worries, because I've thought about this too. It's like, okay, because the way miners make a lot of money now is they get to create Bitcoin. So the way every block that's created up until 2148 is going to add Bitcoin to circulation, obviously cutting by half, and eventually like each block may be creating like 0.0001 or
I
something.
think by like 2040 or 50, it'll be mostly like,
Most-
I mean, you'll be getting block rewards, but it'll be for the most part pretty significantly like 1% of what it started out as or something, or even less, which is not.
so as the price continues to increase, like it's
true.
relatively gonna still offset the cost of mining, or probably be a little bit more profitable depending if they
maybe.
can find cheap energy sources. But my actual counter to the transaction fees thing is like, you get to the point where there's no more Bitcoins actually being created, because right now there's 19 million out in circulation, meaning there's still 2 million more. But we get to 21 million. And so you think about this in Visa's term. So whenever you swipe your credit card, well, actually the merchants, they're the one that take the hit on this.
Mhm.
But merchants, they have to pay about like a 2 something percent. I remember this because I worked at my dad's store, and I remember he would always say, like, if you can get cash, get cash. Don't make them pay. And especially if like you pay under $5, then like the fee becomes just as much as like the price of them swiping. So the way you think about it with Visa is Visa doesn't make a lot of money by having a high transaction fee, even though like 1 to 2% is can be a lot, whatever. It's still 1 to 2%. They do it by volume of transactions. So 21 million. So we're saying that there's not going to be any more Bitcoins being added to circulation around. It's officially 2148, and most of it's going to come out. Most of Bitcoin in circulation is going to be around in 2040 something. We're expecting that Bitcoin, us, the Bitcoin bulls here, the Bitcoin believers, the diamond hands or hodlers, we're expecting that Bitcoin will be used more. It'll be adopted by over billions of people, by essentially the whole entire world. And the more I think about it, the more I'm still even more bullish on the case. But
to be clear, that is an assumption.
Is it an
That's
assumption?
not necessarily a bad assumption, but it is very clearly an assumption.
Bullish assumption. And so essentially it's the same idea with Visa. There's going to be a lot more transactions happening on the network, so therefore the fees are going to end up canceling out just again. So yeah, you give up. So right now there's not as much transactions, but they're getting subsidized by the fact that they get to create Bitcoin. But then eventually there's going to be more transactions, and the more transactions about the same fees, you're going to balance it out, subsidies. And I know you had a very concerning I guess question about that.
Say it again?
I know you were pretty concerned about like, are there actually going to reach that many transactions?
Yeah, I mean, because Visa is what the biggest. I mean, they does anyone else do credit card transactions beside Visa that like on a massive scale like they do? I don't know. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. But I mean, that is assuming that everyone, like, you're also taking into account the fact that like Visa, they're the middleman between almost every transaction that is going through, like grocery stores, restaurants, like all the typical places. So I'm not 100% sure that Bitcoin would be the medium of exchange for those places. I'm not saying there won't be the same volume. I'm just saying that there's a good chance that Bitcoin will be more of a store of value. And the way you make money on transaction fees is through the amount of transfer. So like if we trade $1 100 times, well, if you get 1% on the dollar 100 times, it doesn't matter that the dollar is how much is in the how much we're trading. It matters how many times we traded it, if that makes sense. So it's like, what is the volume of Bitcoin that is being changed hands between, not exactly how much Bitcoin is there, if that makes sense.
So my counter is an assumption, and your counter to my counter is another assumption. So they cancel out. But I don't want to say that. One, I think I saw a tweet somewhere like miners got paid $58 million in one day. Like that's typically how much a day to secure the network. Yeah. And second, you're still thinking in the perspective that you're questioning if it's going to happen.
Right.
So if we're talking about the date that there is not going to be any more Bitcoin being created, 2148, that is what? 120 years from now.
I mean, but the different, like you said, 19 million right now, only 2 million. So,
Well,
the majority of Bitcoin has already been created. That's all I'm saying.
okay, but you're still but when a lot of those Bitcoins were being created, how much were they worth?
Not much, right?
Exactly.
I know, and from a monetary perspective, like one Bitcoin now is worth a lot more than one Bitcoin in the past, right?
And one Bitcoin in the future is more likely going to be worth a lot
More
more.
likely, but I'm just like, there's no clear evidence to suggest, in my opinion, that transaction fees will hold the network. So this is just something I don't have any evidence against it. I'm just saying there is not. It's not very obvious that it will hold the network, right?
Well, yes.
So it's just something to keep your eye on. Is all I'm saying.
It's a new technology. Time will tell. And for those that believe will get the greatest upside, this is an asymmetric bet you're making. Bitcoin goes to zero, which at this point it will not. And I can make a lot of good arguments for that. So Bitcoin either stays at 50,000 where it's at right now, bouncing around, or you make the bet that it may go up to 100, a million, 100,000 a coin, or a million a coin.
So we are at an impasse. Takeaway though is just keep your eye on the transaction fees and how that can hold the network together. Maybe you don't. Maybe you side with Mel and you don't think that's necessarily an issue.
Or maybe you sided with the boomer Ben.
Am I?
Ben, you sound like a boomer on this argument, but I mean that's just all crypto people are going to tell you.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I have to give you a hard time. So the last issue is, and this one is something that is not really, well, it might be, it'll probably be solved, but I'll just go with it. The last issue is private key security. So as we talked about last episode, your private key is, you can think of it as like your password to your Bitcoin. That's not exactly how it works, but generally speaking, that's the same principle.
It's the key to being able to utilize your
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
But
Essentially,
yeah, if you lose your password though, or if someone steals your password, because Bitcoin is decentralized, no governing authority can give you back your Bitcoin or replace your password. Like your account is gone if you lose your private key. Like it's just your money is gone, right? So you need to keep it very safe. And of course, if you keep it on the internet or as a digital, if you do store it digitally, that could be an issue because people can hack and find get your digital information. So it's better to store it physically, like on a piece of paper or something else, or maybe like highly encrypted. Mel might be able to give you a better answer on the best way to store it. But that is an issue with Bitcoin, that if you lose or have your private key stolen, your account's done, right?
yeah. And so if you make bad decisions, you have to live with the consequences, right? But so to actually present this argument in a way that to me it's very mind blowing, changing. That was
such a funny if you make bad decisions, you just live with the consequences, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like
that's just my answer when I've heard this a bunch, so like that's my answer every time. Well, what I'm now like being like, okay, I get it, whatever. But actually, like the argument for, I guess, the private key security, like, oh my God, like I'm gonna lose it. We're not gonna have this central power to ask to recover my password, to be able to change it. Bitcoin is the greatest form of property right ever, right? And so whenever you own your house, if you want to call it even owning your house, whenever you own the car,
do you want to expand on owning your house in quotation marks real quick? Is that a tangent you want to go on? You don't have to.
The government owns the land that we live on. You are practically just essentially saying, hey, government, I'm going to you really partially own it. If the government wanted to, they could take it away from you, like legitimately. And I mean, it's happened all around. And we are fortunate enough, if you live in the United States or any country with I guess good rulers. I don't want to say competent or democracy, or not a totalitarian
fair
government.
enough not to take your land.
Yeah,
put it that way.
They won't take your land. So, but every other asset, you think about owning a stock. You don't like you owning a part of that company doesn't mean you fully own that company unless you are the one that starts it yourself. But even then, again, the government can stop your company. They can take it away. Gold, first off, what was it? It was like 1971. We got off the gold standard, and they literally could seize it. And there was literally laws where they would seize it, or you go to jail for gold because it's a physical thing. But Bitcoin, you can truly own it and absolutely no one can take it away. So your private key is the string of like characters, numbers that you can memorize in your mind. This is something Michael likes to say. You can memorize millions of dollars worth of value in your mind and have access to it, and no one could ever take that away from you unless they put a gun to your head and force you to say it. I mean, I guess they could, but
Yeah, I mean,
really, you could lie.
they would know,
They would know, but at the same
and they're gonna
time,
find out. I mean, yeah, my concern is not like honestly, if you lose it, I'm gonna be honest with Mel, like you made a bad decision, like tough. But if it gets stolen, like there's not. It's very difficult in my like not difficult. Like there are many ways where that someone who has the right enough intent or enough passion or what do you even call it to rob you, they could they could take your money. Like that's all I'm saying. Like there's a risk there, and how you
it's a
store it is
lot.
important. It's something to keep in mind. I'm not saying it's an unsolvable problem. It comes with a lot of responsibility, but it is something to be very wary of, at least.
I mean, yeah. So it's the idea like you're getting something that one you have the greatest right to it. So to complete what I was saying before was since this is the greatest form of property right, it's gonna come with the greatest form of responsibility, and meaning that yeah, sure, you're not going to have someone to run to whenever it gets stolen or whatever. Number one, on the idea of it being stolen, it's easier to steal cash than it is to steal Bitcoin. It's easier to rob a bank than it is to rob Bitcoin. I mean, you could probably take someone's if someone is being careless, you're right, you can hack into their, like, maybe they store it on like a Google something. Like there is ways to secure your private key. There's something like you can have it like split up into like multi-sig. You can have like a multi-sig wallet where you would need to get where you could get parts of your private key from here, get different parts. There's a bunch of different ways, but second argument I'll make for it is that yes, this is an issue, but as we continue to want to have Bitcoin becoming more widely adopted, there's going to be entrepreneurs, there's going to be companies that are going to work towards solutions to help make the process of actually owning and holding your own Bitcoin easier. So I would look for that in the future. We're still super early into this technology. I mean, a bunch of people in crypto from like Coinbase and big platforms actually went to speak to Congress a couple of days ago.
Oh, really?
And it seems like some people are still boomers, but some are starting to see the light. So it's an exciting world we're living in.
Exciting time.
With all that, so to kind of, I guess, to go over real quick with centralization, the thing I'll say with the different ones of like maybe mining hardware ownership and mining, it really, my argument is that people that are participating in the network and even those that are trying to hack the network, they have a greater incentive to actually play fair and respect and honor the network, because again, if you hack Bitcoin, it's automatically going to go really, really south and not worth as much. And then second, transaction fees. I believe that as time goes forward, the transaction fees will be sufficient because more transactions will be going through. And just like Visa, you're going to make it on the volume, not by increasing the fees themselves. And last but not least, private keys. Bitcoin is the greatest form of property right. That means it's also the greatest form of responsibility. So take the responsibility. And if you have millions of dollars locked up, if you have $1 million of Bitcoin, I would hope you would, go to the extent. Like people protect their guns, their gold, and like vases.
And something to think about. I just thought about this.
I said vases. Sorry, I meant vaults.
Vaults. If you wanted to, you could. You can make how many addresses you want, or accounts, however you want to think about it, for Bitcoin, and split up your money that way, and have multiple private keys. So if someone stole, they can only steal one account. I'm just thinking about that. But anyway,
look at Ben being innovative. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Problem solving. That's an engineer
that's
right
engineering
there.
things.
That's an engineer. But we talked a lot about Bitcoin.
Yep.
Are there other coins out there, Ben?
Of course there are. There are many other coins. You've heard of them, but the big one, which if you've heard of Bitcoin, you've probably heard of this one too. It's Ethereum. And
people.
No. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
You were just gonna give the nice transition. I had to take it away from Ben because obviously I love talking about crypto. But so people love talking about Ethereum because they believe Ethereum has more utility, right? There's the argument within the own crypto space is Bitcoin versus Ethereum or every other platform. And the reason is because some people say that, Bitcoin isn't really worth that much because it's not utility. That's a whole different argument. But Ethereum, there's utility because what Ethereum is trying to be is, I guess, the decentralized platform for like the next internet, I would say, like Web3. If you've heard this term, Web 3.0, it's been going around. It's been really hyped. But from the book, how the book explains Ethereum is the vision of Ethereum is to create an unstoppable, censorship resistant, self sustaining, decentralized world computer, right? And Ethereum themselves will describe and say Ethereum is open access to digital money, data friendly services for everyone, no matter your background or location. It's a community building technology behind the cryptocurrency Ether and thousands of applications you can use today.
I'm gonna be honest. So you said you threw a bunch of words there. You said Web3, data services. A bunch of the community built technology. Like if you're someone like me who doesn't really know that much about the world of Bitcoin, I mean of crypto. Even though I know I read a book, but I still consider myself like relatively just don't know much. Could you start by giving us the differences between Ethereum and Bitcoin, and then could you actually expand afterward on Web3 because that's the most interesting thing about Ethereum to me so far, you said.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um, so Ethereum and Bitcoin. So the biggest difference with Ethereum and Bitcoin, I would say, is this idea of smart contracts. But before we go into that, I'll talk about a little bit more nuance details. One, there's just a lot more Ethereum out there. Bitcoin is hard capped at 21 million. Ethereum does have an inflationary monetary policy, so more Ethereum is going to get created over time, but I think it's actually set. So that's one of the beauties of like cryptocurrencies is you can actually set the inflation and know how much is coming. You don't have to wait for the government to put out a report after they printed a ton of money. Second is it's faster to mine Ethereum, but they are moving away from proof of work and moving into proof of stake. Third is this idea of concept of gas fees instead of transactions. Essentially the same thing. The difference, the reason why they're named differently is because Ethereum is not just trying to be a currency, but it's also trying to, as the book described, a world computer. So there's a lot more happening on there. There's things like NFTs, which just mean like taking art. For one example, art is just one example, an NFT, and then putting that onto a blockchain, and then that itself can be a token, and that can, you can prove ownership of actual digital artwork. And then, but last but most importantly, is this idea of smart contracts. So, smart contracts, the way you would think about smart contracts is the way the name implies, a contract that is smart. And the reason why it's smart is because it's built on the blockchain. It is automated to execute that contract. So, when people think of smart contracts, sometimes they may mistakenly think that, hey, like, what does that mean? I have to like write the contract and like put it in there. Like, yeah, you can. A lot of people say like you write, instead of writing the contract out on paper, you write it on code, and then the contract is automatically executed, especially if you're talking about things like monetary. So let's say me and Ben made this agreement like, hey, on April 20 something, I'm going to pay Ben for XYZ services, right? And this is looking a little bit more forward into the world when a lot more things are on chain, meaning they're on like more data stored and more different types of transactions, not just financial, happen on the blockchain. Where I do a service for Ben, that gets recorded on the blockchain notices that, and then the contract gets executed like, okay, Armel did this for Ben at this time, Ben's going to pay me. It automatically happens without any of us having to actually interact. And this is the whole idea of like trustless. The blockchain allows people to transact with each other trustless, because we know that you can't go and change that code because, again, it's on the blockchain. So I've said on the blockchain a lot, but just watch the previous episodes to understand what that really means.
What are some, before you go on to Web 3.0, what are some further applications of smart contracts? Because this is like, it's pretty deep and it's very interesting. This is well beyond the realm of currency, like far beyond the realm of currency.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it may happen on Ethereum if they can move to proof of stake, just meaning that, so right now a problem is those gas fees, right? Because it's a proof of work, it's very expensive to do those transactions. So some of these other applications I'll go into are not possible right now, because if you wanted to just simply write up your mortgage on a ledger on this blockchain, then you can't really do that.
Someone's got to put the work in to
verify it, and then you have to pay like an extra 20, 30, whatever dollars for it, right? But so the applications Ben is referring to is like, you can have, like I mentioned, personal contracts between you, someone, legal contracts will start going on there. Don't be surprised if you see things like you get your diploma on, like, schools could either create their own network and you get that on the blockchain. Financial obligations, voting, a big reason why voting would actually be a really good use case for cryptocurrencies, not for crypto and blockchain, is because one, you want to be able to trust that whenever someone places a vote, it cannot be changed or tampered with. That is one thing of an immutable ledger that is great about it, and transparent. So you don't have to show the people that you obviously don't have to show the people that voted. Like in Bitcoin, you don't see who sent money to who. You just kind of have like this ID address or whatever. So you can see who, like, what people voted for, but you don't know who it is, right? So you can create technology like that, and there's a lot more like insurance. Like, I would think anything that has to do with you signing paperwork to prove something, to prove legality and all that, will more likely be moving on the blockchain. And I've even heard people that are gold bugs, complete gold head. They're like, yeah, that's happening. And that's a big reason why like Ethereum and NFTs are huge for the crypto community, because it's bringing on people to understand, like, it gets people to understand, like, oh wait, this technology can be helpful. And then eventually, like, Ben will come to notice and learn, is that Bitcoin and a lot of the other applications are just going to eat away the rest of the world. So that is just a part of it.
To be honest, I'm more bullish about Ethereum than I am about
You
Bitcoin.
sound like such a boomer. Oh my god. But
You can tell Mel watches. He does research on Bitcoin like low key every day, so
I do
he knows a lot more. Anyways,
I do a lot about Bitcoin. Obviously there's the Web3 aspect, which
yeah,
that's really like Bitcoin. When we're talking about like money itself, what will be what will be the money in the future is Bitcoin. Everything else is a project that is hoping to eat away some part of some industry, right? And but so when we're talking about Web3, like, what is Web3? To not go into it too much, because I can't give you the best explanation, not yet, but we will have a whole episode on it soon. Not soon, but eventually. Is that Web3 is like the decentralized web right now. So right now, most of the web, like, I'll actually start from the beginning. So Web 1.0 was first created in around, it was like 1989, and it was first made for really linking information. So there was this research group. There's this research group, and they were like, okay, we have all these different projects and stuff, but like, how are we going to like organize these? How are we going to be able to easily access them? And the whole idea of the web was just hyperlinks. Like, you click on one page, and then this page leads you to another link, and then this page leads you to another link, and then all this is the idea of hyperlinks and all that stuff. So that was web one. Web one was simply just information. It was just, you went on the internet and you could read these static pages and you saw information. Now Web 2 was now a term more centralized. So the first version of the web, the internet itself, is a decentralized protocol. The internet is fully decentralized. That's something that people don't really seem to get when they talk about the internet. But Web 2 became more centralized, where now you had applications like, Google. But really talking about social medias, you have Facebook, Twitter, all these different platforms that now started to collect data. And another thing with the web pages is that they became more dynamic. You had stuff like, YouTube. You could watch videos on the internet and stuff on the web. You could, play games on the web and all that stuff. So it became more dynamic. But companies started to pop up, and they started to control parts of the internet and store data, right? Now, the great thing now, what Web3 really is trying to introduce is, one, not one central party owns it, right? And that everyone gets to own a piece of it. So think about if like a Twitter came out. Twitter right now is only owned by, obviously Twitter company and its shareholders. But if they came out with a decentralized Twitter, you would be able to, one, control your data, because what would happen is you could store all that data. Instead of storing it on a central server, you're storing it on this distributed ledger. But you could also reroute that to your own personal, like, you could say, like, this is my address that I want this data to be, sent to, right? Because it's my data. And then because it's on the blockchain, because you yourself get to proof of ownership of your own data, then you can take that back out, and, like, if you wanted to give it to a company to use, and they would pay you for it. So you can actually start to monetize your own data, because ownership of data becomes possible. Because now on the internet, you can't own your data, because all the information, all the data gets routed back to servers that are owned by huge companies. And that's one thing. And another thing is that people can now start to actually own a piece of that own a piece of that company. Like, the decentralized Twitter can come out with its own tokens, and now people can own a piece of that token. And the incentive for users to want to create more content to use the platform becomes a lot greater. Now, this is an idea that is, not happened yet, but it's something that is being talked about greatly. And honestly, I've actually met somebody at UT that came and spoke, and they're working on like decentralized social media. So that's something to be on the lookout over the next 5 to 10 years.
I like how this man was like, I don't know much, but I can give you a little bit. He goes on like a 5 minute like little monologue on what Web3 is. I appreciate it. That was enlightening.
I know. I saw Ben eyes open because I actually never brought that up.
Yeah,
in
he
the
never
previous
brought
one.
like the way he segued from 1, 2 to 3, connected them in a way that I hadn't heard before. Not that I've heard a lot about it, but enough that I was like, oh, I haven't heard that before. Like,
It's really
Mel brought some
interesting.
new stuff.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
I've done more. I've expanded my research. I dove hard on Bitcoin. Now I'm really starting to understand the entire Web3. But with all that being said, though, I kind of gave you guys just a good idea of what's possible. But the thing that makes it possible are these different type of tokens. And can you go on to like all these various kinds and their utilities?
Yeah, so crypto assets, Bitcoin isn't the only asset. We have what's called digital tokens. Mel referred to a certain type earlier, which was NFT, which stands for non-fungible token, I believe. But there are many types of digital tokens, and essentially one easy way to think about a token, this is not encompassing all tokens, but it's an easy way to think about it, is imagine you bought a ticket to go to a concert, right? That ticket could be thought of as a token for the concert in the sense that it is something that you can redeem in the context of the concert, and it has value in context of the concert, right? But if you were trying to go to a different concert, that ticket doesn't mean anything, right? So the digital token is a claim on an asset or a service, right? And our example, the service would be you get to go and enjoy live music for fun, right? But this can be applied to financial assets. This can be applied to services. In Mel's case, digital art. We have many different types of tokens. So we have asset-backed tokens, utility tokens, brand tokens, security tokens. Those are just a few.
And to quickly give examples, because like asset-backed tokens, you can think about like equities would move to the blockchain, meaning equities are like stocks, right?
Yeah.
So Tesla, instead of you buying the share from the New York Stock Exchange or whatever, maybe you could go on a 24 hours always open exchange and buy Tesla coin or whatever. And then brand tokens, that's what I mentioned with the decentralized Twitter. Like you can own a piece of that company, that brand, right? And even there's things like clout coin or whatever things.
Clout coin.
I can't remember exactly the name.
That's a funny name, actually.
It's actually, it's really, it's that's the point. The name is like, oh, okay, what are you talking about? Clout for?
Coin.
But it's where like, it's the idea again is Twitter, but like you get to own a piece of like someone, if that makes sense. Someone issues coin, not own a piece of someone. Someone issues coin. Let me rephrase that. You don't get to own someone. But someone issues
Whoa
out their
there,
coin.
It's the 21st century, son.
Someone issues out their coin, and then you get to own a piece of some of their coin, and like you're kind of owning, you're buying into that person's like future. Like being like, hey, I really believe in this person. I believe their value is going to go up. Other people are going to.
That's an interesting idea.
It's like Elon. Imagine if you like bought Elon coin when he
all in, boys. No,
hey,
maybe
you would be chilling. Yeah. You'd be chilling. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, security tokens, same thing on so same things owning different type of equities and all that. But
so that's just like it's a very light introduction to digital tokens. There is an entire universe of tokens, but now we're going to talk about the future of Bitcoin, specifically what's called the Lightning Network, and we'll get into DeFi, which is Decentralized Finance. And these are really cool applications and different ideas around Bitcoin that are really neat and super cool technology. But Mel, what is the Lightning Network and why do we need it?
We need it because Bitcoin is optimized for security. I want to start that off before I do say Bitcoin can only handle 7 transactions per second.
Abysmal. 7 per second? I can count faster than that.
No, you can't. So we mentioned Visa. That's actually really fast. Like 1, 2, see, but 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, but so once you compare it to Visa, Visa does around 1,700 transactions per second, but it can scale up to 65,000 transactions per second, right? So
65, that's a good number. 65,000, that's a lot. 7, no bueno.
And the reason some people may ask, like, why? Like, why is it only 7?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're optimized. Bitcoin's optimized for security, but like, what does that mean?
So when Bitcoin was designed, some of the implementation decisions were purposely made for the fact that want to handle that many transactions because again, it wanted to act as a sound money. And so being a sound money is you don't want your network to easily be hacked. So it went with the proof of work system. And with a proof of work, there's some limitations, and that's specifically with the block size and the block time, right? And so a way people were thinking like, okay, you could fix this by either increasing the block size or by by decreasing the time it takes to create a block, right? And so right now, like the way Bitcoin works in blocks is transactions aren't handled one at a time. They're actually batched up into these blocks, and the blocks can only hold 1 megabyte per sec. 1 megabyte, sorry, can only hold 1 megabyte, which is about 2,700 transactions that can fit in a block. So that means every 10 minutes, 2,700 transactions are getting confirmed, right? So one of the ideas was, hey, increase the block size. Now, when you do that, you are jeopardizing the security. And the reason is because the bigger the block size means that it would be harder for the average computer. Only a few computers could actually store the full history of the network. And so that's a big issue because the whole idea is that you want this network to be open to everybody so that someone running a 2012 Macintosh or the latest greatest quantum computer or something could join the network. So this idea of that it's open to everybody, so that's a huge thing. And if you're talking about doing more than 1 megabyte per second, because someone goes like, okay, the whole history itself, like either you're slicing up to 1 megabyte, 10 megabytes, whatever. But if we kept pushing it to 2, okay, now no, we needed to scale even more. Let's go to 10 gigabytes. Let's go to That's a lot to do every 10 minutes for a computer. Like your computer legitimately could not do that. Like most people's laptops.
We had a whole argument about this last time we recorded this, but I'm confused on where the entire chain is stored, I guess. Like, is it just because I know it's distributed, if I'm not mistaken, but how it just confuses me on how it's distributed. Like, is that too complicated to go into?
It's definitely a whole thing on its own, and it's definitely something that I would need to do better research and be able to easily articulate. But the easiest way I could explain it is that really only a few computers actually have the full history stored on the system, and those are like computers, not just computers, but these are like factories, like not factories, but like warehouses of computers like joined up together. People have probably seen them, of these miners, like their whole companies that store them in these like practically like data centers. Imagine they are data centers, but there's a whole bunch of data centers all around the world. There's not just one Google that has a data center handling all the transactions, but it's a data center in Texas, data center in Australia, data center in New Zealand, all these different big data centers. They're the ones that actually are capable of holding the entire history, right? But people like me and you can join on the network, but we don't have to take the entire history. Like since we trust that, everybody else before, because the idea of the way the blockchain, the way specific Bitcoin network works is that it goes with the longest chain. So you have to accept the longest chain to be the truth, right? And that's because there's a lot of work that goes into making the chain. And so really it is distributed, like the full history is distributed throughout a bunch of the more bigger data centers, bigger miners, but then anybody can hop on. They can go as far back as they want to. So when you do this is all actually happening with like it's very abstract the way I have to explain it, because there's a lot more technical stuff that goes into you actually joining it and everything. Not too crazy, but it is
enough
that it's over this this specific episode. But so you can always join on the network, take a part of that history, or you can just jump straight in and just accept that the next block that comes to you. And the reason why if increasing the block size is because it's not that the history itself would be too much to store. It's that you actually processing 10 gigabytes at a time.
Yeah, that's too much for a computer.
Yeah, and because I have taken Compark, I do now understand that like your computer does have certain, like even though you may have like a 16 gigabyte computer, there are portions of that space that is reserved for already programs that already exist on your computer, and like it can't always take the full 10 and batch it, process and all that stuff like that. By the time, if you had like 10, if you made it like a gigabyte or something, like people every 10 minutes, imagine a gigabyte every 10 minutes. That means in 16 minutes, no, sorry, in 160 minutes, you will fill up a 16 gigabyte computer. And
160, yeah.
Yeah, 160. So That's one of the reasons why increasing the block
Right.
size would not make it possible, would make it only possible for a few computers to process the transactions.
So I want to rewind you real quick and just so could you succinctly in like a few
Yeah.
sentences just restate why we're optimizing for security and why we have to sacrifice speed and what else is there?
So
We're sacrificing speed and
it was the size that you can the size of the block and the time that it's created.
because like only like but you explained a triangle that was like really helpful. It was like there's kind of like
so
this trade-off triangle where like you
Yeah.
choose one
Yeah.
and then you sacrifice
it's security, scalability,
and speed.
and speed. I don't believe so.
Scalability sounds.
Scalability and speed are the
While
same
you look
thing. I
for it,
remember.
I'll keep talking. So, but basically, because Bitcoin is optimized for security, it has to sacrifice on other factors, right? And so
There it is. Sorry. How could I forget? Oh my goodness. Decentralization, scalability, and security. That is the trilemma. So decentralization meaning like, again, Bitcoin is the
Yeah.
most decentralized protocol out there. But when you're talking about scalability and speed, it loses on that aspect.
Okay, so I guess it's really between scale because I mean all the crypto assets we're talking about are decentralized,
are
but
decentralized, but some more
so
decentralized
you're really
than others.
sacrificing between scalability and security. But because we're doing proof of work, that's why we have to sacrifice scalability because we need everyone to have an opportunity to be able to contribute to the network. And is that what's going on here?
So because really decentralization and security kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So the more decentralized, the
I
more
see.
computers you have
Yeah.
that are working towards hashing and
Yeah.
adding to the hash
I guess
power.
proof of stake is less.
Yeah,
Is
proof of
more
stake
centralized.
is more centralized because
Yeah.
you only have a couple. You only have a
Right.
couple nodes that are verified because they've put a amount of coins
Right.
into it. But it's okay to quickly.
Yeah, go.
To
Can we hit the
quickly-
Lightning Network because we have not even touched Lightning Network?
Yeah. So, but again, to touch on it really fast, block size. If you're increasing the block size, not only a few computers will be able to actually run the network. So therefore, decentralization will decrease and security, along with decentralization, decreases. But some people will go like, okay, well, why don't we increase the amount of blocks that are actually increase the time blocks are created? Because every 10 minutes a block is created. To easily answer this is to say that so the way blocks get propagated out is that it has to send it like one node will send it to nodes that it's connected to, and then those nodes will propagate it out to ones that are connected to it. So eventually all reaching every single node in the system. And so I guess it was calculated to be about 10 minutes. But the problem is if you cut down that time, you're risking the fact that like some blocks will come out at one time and another block will come out another. So this will mess up the ordering of the blocks, and therefore you need to know. So in order to actually create a block, you need to know the previous block's hash. So that's a problem. So again, size and time, we cannot give those up because of security. So this is where finally the Lightning Network comes in, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, dude, y'all been talking about this so long. But so the Lightning Network is a layer 2 solution. So the way to think about layer 2, layer 1 is we'll bring it to the analogy of gold because everyone says Bitcoin is digital gold, and for really good reasons, but better. So gold was the original money, right? People would first,
I mean, yes.
the original
Technically, no, but I
the
understand.
original
Yeah, go ahead.
worldwide
Yes,
accepted
yeah.
money, right? So we'll go with that.
Just to make sure people don't get like, because people are, but yeah.
Yeah, so gold was the original money that everybody in the world used, right? So by the point that it was pretty globalized and everything, people were decided gold was the money. And so first people were transacting like the gold itself, like either the bricks, and then it ended up becoming coins, and those coins ended up also having some different type of metals in them, blah 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 blah. But eventually people are like, this is really tedious, like there's limitations that gold has, right? And so what happened was people would store it at a blacksmith and say, hey, like I can write you a note of proof of ownership of you being like, hey, if you come back with this paper note, you can exchange it for gold. And that's how the first idea of paper money came to be, right? And so that was the layer 2 solution to the gold problem, right? And so And so the same way that gold had its limitations of it, gold's limitation was the fact that it was very heavy, so it was very easy to move around. The paper money became the layer 2 solution. Well, Bitcoin, it's not heavy, but it is slow. And so what has to happen is we need a solution that will make it faster, and that is the idea of the Lightning Network. It's a layer 2. It's a layer 2 for the cryptocurrency, but it's not a blockchain. It's not like you do these transactions on.
It's centralized ish.
Yes, the idea.
I don't know anything about it.
So as you, a lot more of the projects nowadays are going to be more and more centralized. The idea is that they are built with like they have the mechanisms of being decentralized, and the fact that there's different nodes running and everything, but it's a little bit more centralized. That's a different conversation.
Right.
But so it's not a blockchain. The idea is that it's actually a series of interconnected payment channels created by two parties on the Bitcoin network. And so the way it works is that the payment channels are created between two parties when each deposit Bitcoin into a multi-sig wallet. So that multi-sig wallet means that it requires both of our signatures in order for us to, want to do something with that money, right? And so this creates an off-chain protocol, because what happens is you deposit the same way that you deposited that gold into a blacksmith and they were able to write IOUs. You're able to deposit your Bitcoin, both of y'all, into this wallet. But the great part is that there's no intermediaries. You don't need someone to, watch over the Bitcoin. Y'all both have the signature to it. So y'all both deposit into this wallet, and then now y'all can start writing IOUs off the chain. This is the part where it starts to become a lot faster to transact, right? And so the Lightning Network is scalable. It's because the way it works is me and you can create a channel, right? Mm-hmm. We'll pass back and forth, IOUs, whatever. But then if you had a channel with, let's say, Sam, and then I wanted to send money to Sam, it would be tedious for me to create another channel with Sam, and then we have this three-way channel. You could just send it
through me,
through your channel, right? So that it's this whole network of like, hey, if you open this channel with this new person, and then if there's a connection with this person, there might be someone in India that has a connection with this person. Next thing you know, you're able to send money to everybody in the world.
Which is why it's called a network.
That's why it's called the Lightning Network, because money gets moved around fast.
Mind is blown.
So these transactions get automatically routed between connected payment channels, and they use something called like a hash time lock, which prevents intermediaries from intercepting. Not to go into detail, but quickly explaining, a hash time lock contract is a transactional agreement used in the cryptocurrency industry to produce conditional payments. It is basically a payment wherein the receiver or the beneficiary is required to acknowledge the receipt of the payments before a predetermined time or preset deadline. So just meaning that you are going to be aware of the fact that I'm sending you money. It's going to be really weird if you receive the package and you weren't aware of that package coming to your house. So it's going to be really weird if I request some coin from you and you did not expect that, or you got some Bitcoin from me and you did not expect it. So that's the idea, but obviously with a lot more math and cryptographic stuff happening.
Technicalities.
A lot of technicalities. So
all that being said, give us a quick summary and
got you. So a quick summary of what the Lightning Network is. Bitcoin's network itself can only handle 7 transactions per second. That is a problem because at scale that cannot work. So the Lightning Network is like paper money to what Bitcoin. I'm trying to make how do people phrase the analogy. The Lightning Network is to paper money what? How do people say that?
The Lightning Network and Bitcoin are analogous to paper money and gold.
Not the way I want to say it, but yes, exactly that. And so the idea is the Lightning Network is providing this solution that allows people to transact off of the chain. Once those transactions get settled out, then that's going to be finally added back to the Bitcoin network and everything like that. And this is not only limited to Bitcoin, but this can also facilitate other cryptocurrencies. So now we're adding interoperability between different blockchains. So this is a whole other idea. This is going to go into our Web3 discussion. But Bitcoin, and I just want to add, like, Lightning Network is so important, because if Bitcoin wants to, like I mentioned, have more transactions go through it, the Lightning Network is going to be absolutely necessary for this to happen, and it's going to be what allows Bitcoin to truly become a medium of exchange.
Yeah, without the scalability, 7 transactions per second. No chance.
Hater ban.
A little bit. Anyways, The last thing on the docket is DeFi, decentralized finance. Could you quickly give us an overview of what it is without too much technicality and some possible functions and what it might mean to our current banking system?
Decentralized finance is finance that happens on the blockchain, simply meaning that me and you, like I can take out a loan, I can deposit, I can take out a loan, I can get returns, I can like put into a, I guess, a bank account or this, they call it a yield farm, a yield pool. I can put into this protocol, this pool, and then it can give me a return on like that invest on that money. So I guess to simply put, it's like you put money into your savings account and you get a bit back, a percent of it, but the bank is an intermediary. They have to take a cut of that because the way the bank makes money is they put out loans. They write out loans of that money that's deposited, and they make some extra money on the side as well. So they create money out of thin air. Just to add that,
Different
conversation,
topic.
but
They do.
crazy, bro.
If that doesn't, if that's actually true,
The
you can
bank
look it up.
just creates money.
Yeah.
Think about that. But so because there is that, the bank is in the middle and they do that, they take a huge cut because they honestly loan out the money that you deposit in the bank for a lot more than you get back. But the reason you get back so few is because they have to pay all their workers, they have to cover for their physical buildings. So what DeFi does is say, hey, let's have the same idea of depositing, like everyone can pool their money together into this one place to loan out. We can, set an interest on this. Again, smart contracts make this possible because it's all happening automated by the contract. The contract is executing this idea. And so we can loan out that money, but then we can get all the interest back ourselves and we don't have to split the money with some middleman that is really not doing anything. So, but to put the term all in the definition, so DeFi is short for decentralized finance. It is an umbrella term for peer-to-peer financial services on public blockchains, primarily Ethereum. Like I mentioned, DeFi does what banks do. You can earn interest, borrow, lend, buy insurance, trade derivatives, but it is faster and there is no third party.
That was a great explanation. One comment I have is that if you saw me sitting over here nodding my head stone face, it's because I've heard him say that like 8 times. But in all seriousness, that is one of the most revolutionary applications of crypto assets. Yeah. Cryptocurrency. Yeah. And just the fact that, and what Mel is talking about, if we cut out the middleman, we're cutting out banks, right? As you said, which is like that is just like a fundamental. As someone who's taken a couple economics classes, some finance,
did
like
a whole
accounting.
Business. Hey, let's say this man did a whole business minor in a summer. That is crazy. So he understands the banking system better than I do. To be honest,
the fact that this has the opportunity to just disrupt that entire system, especially the way that, I mean, most people understand the economy and money and the context of the banking system. So that's a very hard idea to understand, right? But it has huge ramifications, and it's very hard to grasp onto and really like take hold of. But if you can get your head around the fact that this actually is the better way to do finance, you can see that there's some real opportunity here.
And if you ask the question, why did we even have banks before? Well, because one, we talked about how gold was a hassle to move around, right? But then we moved away from gold anyway, and then it was like, what were banks there for again? For that depositing of money, because we needed a place where we could store it. We couldn't you couldn't store it in your backyard or whatever.
I mean, you could,
right? But it just wouldn't.
It's not
really
advisable, but you could.
But I honestly though, like the reason why banks became even more crucial was whenever everything became digitalized, because you needed someone to keep track of that everything, ledger.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, how are you gonna trust the fact that I email you? Hey, I'm emailing you $10. What? Yeah, so
okay.
Banks would be important because when things became digital, there wasn't a solution like how Bitcoin introduced to send money online directly with each other. Because I could directly pay you with cash, but I can't directly swipe a card and you get the money instantly without there actually being a bank in the middle. So that's why banks were necessary. Banks are there because we needed them at the time. We didn't have a better solution for trust. Now we do. So DeFi is important because it takes the basic premise of Bitcoin, but it says, hey, Wall Street, hey, banks, we're going to uplift you We don't need you. We don't need those fancy offices. We don't need your fancy suits. We don't need your fancy salaries. We can create a system that is more open, that is fair to everybody, because banks can stop you. Banks can do a lot. They can say, hey, I'm not going to allow you to pay this person. Hey, you can't take out this loan because you have XYZ credit score. Blah, blah, blah. A lot of.
You also have banks like Wells Fargo. So.
And and you have shady banks as well. That in itself is a whole different problem. But so we can create a more open, fair financial market that anyone can access because it's on the internet and it's open 24/7.
It's a crazy world we live in.
But quickly hit on the benefits. I'm gonna run through this because I know Ben wants to lose in chess after this.
Just kidding.
So the benefits is, one, DeFi is open. Like we mentioned, you just need your private key. You just need to get a private key, create a public, private key, get your public key. Yeah, you get your private key, then you get your public key, then you get your address, your wallet. It's pseudonymous. You don't have to put your name down or anything. It's flexible, meaning that you can take your assets anywhere because it's online, and then you don't have to ask for permission to join a protocol or anything like that. And it happens 24/7, fast. Like the interest rates that you get on what you deposit into, like, let's say a savings account or a lending pool gets updated every 15 seconds. Banks, you don't even know how long it takes. And then transparent, because it's on the blockchain, you can go through and look at every history and everything like that. And so how it actually works is, most of the times you're going to interact with DeFi through what they call Dapps, and these stand for decentralized applications. Most of them are ran on the Ethereum, and again, smart contracts is what makes all of this possible, because essentially all banks are doing is writing out contracts and being like, hey, yo, dude, I'm going to give you this money. You have to pay me this amount of interest, and then you have to make sure you pay it all back at this time. Why do you need someone to execute that if you can have code do it? So again, we're going to go into details more in a different episode. But so the ways people engage with DeFi today is lending. You can put into a pool, and then like that pool itself, someone can write a code for it and say, hey, we're going to lend it out to whoever looks for it. Because banks don't go out looking for people to lend money to. People come to the banks to get the loans.
I might disagree with. There's a large portion of people that do come to banks because they need it, but banks also they make money through interest, right? So they have a financial interest, a vested interest in finding the best deals. So a lot of times they actually do go find deals.
And I would say those deals they find, but are more like to institutions.
Yeah, no, they're like for corporations. They're not individuals. Yeah.
Right. And so we're talking about opening a market for individuals.
Yeah.
So and then second, you can get a loan, get a loan. You can trade. This is what's really popular nowadays. You can save for the future. Save in Bitcoin. Again, you can put into these lending pools, and there's different, like, where you can stake your coins to get like 20% interest, like real stuff. I'm not kidding. Hey guys, inflation hit an all-time high, a 40-year high of 6.8. So if you're not beating 6.8%, you're losing purchasing power, meaning that
and if you're not invested, you're losing 6.8%.
Yeah. So
or maybe it's not. Anyways,
inflation is at 6.8%, guys. This is real ass. Inflation is usually at 2. This is
what's unemployment at? Are we
I think it's
at
like
5?
a 9 point.
Oh, it's 9?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna hit like stagflation? That's a bad term.
Wow.
You don't want stagflation.
And then last but not least, buying derivatives. And this is a whole nother thing, but this is like going long or short on assets. And if you don't know what that is, that's a different episode, and we will gladly talk about that more later on. But so again, I'm very bullish, and everyone's like, oh my God, Armel, you only keep talking about the good. What are some of the bad? One, well, originally a lot of people were saying regulation would be it, but like I mentioned earlier in this episode, is that Congress is actually becoming more open to talk about crypto, and a lot of actually let me not say a lot, but I've seen senators, because senators are on Twitter now. It's very interesting.
It is a
different world
we live in.
And it's funny, they reference like tweets too. Like Twitter is going to be like a historical record. Like
Yeah.
your kids are you're gonna come back. Your kids are gonna come back home. And be like, oh my god, what did you learn today in history? So I read Donald Trump's tweets from 20 something. Like wow, you're like damn, Twitter's on the history books. But enough of that.
It really be
So
like that.
downsides. People used to say regulations, but I think that's actually starting to look more optimistic. So I'm really happy about that because that was the biggest threat to crypto in my opinion. Fluctuating transaction rates. We're really early, and so like prices fluctuate. The gas fees on Ethereum are crazy. That's why a lot of people are moving to different blockchains like Solana. I just invested in them, so I had to disclose that. I didn't have to. I just
That's
wanted
what I
to.
said. You really did not have to. Like, I was gonna call you out, but I was like, 100% you did not. Like, there's no reason you had to say
I
that.
just want to let people know I invest in Solana. It's a great project. And then what? Last but not least, also like you yourself have to kind of keep track of the tax purposes. Oh, I want to really make a really so the thought I had in my mind. Taxes are going to be so much easier, and it's also going to be kind of weird whenever the Fed comes out with their own crypto, because they are going to come out with their own crypto. They've been working with MIT on it, but taxes could be made easier because they could actually like. I don't know why taxes are so difficult. Like, why can't they just write us and be like, "Hey, you owe us this much money," and then just send it to us and then like we pay it? At least that's not how everybody.
Well,
works.
you gotta like, how many people would it take to do taxes for the entire country every year? Like, that's a lot of people. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like, of course, when you're on the, if you have everything stored, if you have a bunch of data, because that's a lot of data, you have to make sure it's done right, and it's like, where'd you get the money from? How much cash?
And that's
There's a
why,
lot of, that's why they do tax audits instead of.
and that's why like crypto to me is going to introduce that
Yeah.
solution because you could have all that data already organized. If we're going to be required to pay our taxes with the digital currency that the government's going to come out with, so then and more likely they're going to want people getting paid in that, or you're going to have to convert that, whatever. Like there's going to be a record. It's going to be much easier to keep a record of all the transaction that happens because money is already digital, but it's hard to because it's like I guess it's distributed across all these different banks. But if the Fed comes out with their own coin, it'd be much easier for them to track it all at one place. So I think this could actually make taxes much easier to keep record of. But the downside is there's regulations vary region to region, and so keeping track of your cryptocurrencies and selling, buying, and all that is really more up to you. So with all that being said, though, I think we are
Complete with the Bitcoin series. This is episode number 56 for us. This is number 3 for y'all.
The rabbit hole is
Real.
just started for y'all. I would hope after you heard all of this that you were just eager, and I promise next time we do this, I'm going to come like a true disciple of Michael Saylor and just be spitting facts. And I want to spit. My goal is next time we talk about this, I want to spit so much facts that Ben just jaws. Like I want to see Ben's jaw drop every other sentence I say. So hopefully look out for that. Not hopefully, look out for that, and hopefully Ben's jaws will be dropping. Pause.
Now it's time for my favorite part of the episode. A quote from Armelicus Milius.
This one's a bit straightforward, guys. This is the power of decentralized finance, and we've only scratched the surface. I don't know whose quote that is, but it was a really good quote. Right now, Bitcoin is a bit more established, and people talk about it and blah, blah, blah. But DeFi is the wild, wild west.
I love how ambiguous this quote is. This is the power of DeFi. Like, what? Wait, what is the power exactly? Like,
it goes good because like the quote itself, you're like, what were they talking about? But we just talked about DeFi.
Like, you're like, what is the this? And then you're like, what? Well, I mean, I guess if we've only scratched the surface, there's got to be a lot left, right?
This is just this. It's like you heard about it.
Okay, it's got to be coming, right? Anyways,
this was. I enjoyed
this episode. I mean, yeah, I was hoping to keep it under an hour. We were not even close, but
hey, it was like 8 minutes over. That's like a great thing. Well, guys, any last words, Ben?
No, just when you're investing in crypto, please just use your brain. Don't listen to anyone, and make sure to make the decision for yourself, not because anyone else told you to. And don't invest in random crypto, honestly. Like, just don't. Be careful, guys.
Yeah, I forgot to disclose at the beginning. This is not financial advice. Yeah. We're not financial advisors. We are 20 and how old are you, Ben? 19?
They say I'm 19, but no one really knows.
What was that? All right. With all that being said, it was a great episode. And come back next time for the Bitcoin rabbit hole. After this, what are we releasing? Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah. We're gonna go over the autobiography. Not his autobiography. We're just gonna go over the lessons from Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. So great things to come, and peace, love, and positivity, as Mel would say.
Peace.